In 1996, the person behind these photos, at just 19 years old, changed photography for an entire generation of people, and without really meaning to, helped ignite a movement that critics would spend years just trying to define. This is the story of how that happened. This is the story of HIROMIX. Japan has a long history of photography, and women have always been an important part of that history. However, up until the 1990s, women appeared in the art form as the subject far more often than as the artist. As a result, ideas of what it meant to be a young woman in Japan were most often framed through images made about women rather than by them. And this imbalance wasn't accidental. Japanese society, like many others, historically placed women within private and domestic roles, while the more public and professional side of things, including photography, were more accessible to men. Photography, therefore, frequently became a place where male ideas of femininity and youth were projected, while women's own perspectives struggled to find the same visibility or legitimacy. This, combined with serious gatekeeping by galleries and publications, meant that for decades, Japanese women's photographic voices remained almost entirely invisible. We would eventually start to see a shift in these perceptions in the 1990s. The rise of these public photo booths called Purikura, and affordable point-and-shoot cameras, meant that photography left studios and galleries and started living in pockets and bedrooms. But access alone doesn't change culture. What mattered was what people chose to do with it. And in one case, a teenage girl took that new freedom seriously enough to turn it into something lasting. That girl was called Hiromi Toshikawa, better known today as HIROMIX. HIROMIX is a photographer who was born in 1976 in the Tokyo suburb of Suginami. When she was 19, she was nominated for Canon's New Cosmos of Photography Award, a cultural support project designed to showcase aspiring young photographers. HIROMIX entered a 36-page photo book titled 17 Girl Days. The entry itself was a collection of images exploring the everyday life of a Japanese teenager. They're photographed with a closeness that feels almost like someone thinking out loud with a camera. In regards to the competition, HIROMIX made this statement: "The daily life of a 17-year-old high school student is full of danger. Radical days, passing days, a sadly pitiful world. Why is love painful? Rock is my life. I'm scared that I'm getting closer to becoming an adult. I live, reflecting upon myself." 17 Girl Days won HIROMIX the grand prize, and she became an overnight sensation in Japan. Within a year of her New Cosmos win, HIROMIX published Girls Blue, her first photo book. Later the same year, the magazine Studio Voice dedicated a 50-page spread just to her, titled We Love HIROMIX. She followed that with more books like Japanese Beauty and Hikari, steadily building a body of work. She also wasn't just respected within photography. She exploded into Japan's collective cultural consciousness during a golden age of youth culture within the country. Harajuku fashion, Shibuya-kai music, and magazines like Fruits, Cutie and Zipper all contributed to this explosion of individuality. And HIROMIX was deeply embedded in that world. Stylistically, she didn't stay confined to diary-esque personal images. She began working for magazines, photographing musicians, shooting fashion and portraits. HIROMIX even partly inspired the visual identity of Sofia Coppola's Lost in Translation, a film that she would also briefly appear in twice. In a remarkably short period of time, HIROMIX estimates that she took around 30,000 photos. That work was later distilled into her year 2000 photo book, HIROMIX Works, a retrospective that won her the prestigious Kimura Ihai Award. In response to HIROMIX's popularity, Japanese camera companies began to further develop their technology so that it was easier for everyone to use. HIROMIX made photography feel accessible to everyone, whilst also at the same time proving that everyday life is worthy of art. Alongside peers like Yuri Nagashima and Rinko Kawauchi, HIROMIX was placed at the centre of a movement that critics would later describe as Ononoko Shashin. It's important to note that this name didn't come from the artists themselves. It came from the older, male-dominated photo establishment, trying to put this new generation's aesthetics and ideas into a neat little box. But the more you look at the reaction to Ononoko Shashin, the clearer it becomes that it wasn't actually describing a style of photography at all. It was describing a threat. This wave of female artists made photography about the interior world of women, the exact thing the previous generation insisted was unworthy of serious photography. Calling this group of photographers' work Ononoko Shashin was really an attempt to separate it from the wider photography world. Crucially, the women it was describing entirely rejected Ononoko Shashin as a label. Nagashima said that she found it patronising, and HIROMIX never identified with it at all. And it's in that rejection that we can find the reason why HIROMIX's work is so significant. What she was doing wasn't just a trend or a look, despite it being inherently trendy. Her work marked the point where women started defining their own visual language within Japanese art. It changed who Japanese photography belonged to, and you can see its fingerprints in entire generations of photographers that followed. HIROMIX is often remembered online as the girl who took the first selfie. And honestly, that's how I first heard about her too. But the more I dug into her work, the more it becomes obvious that her legacy is so much bigger than that simple piece of trivia. Look, I am obviously not a teenage girl in 1990s Tokyo, and I would never claim to fully understand what that experience felt like just because I've looked at HIROMIX's photographs. But I don't think you need that perspective to recognise what HIROMIX has given us. She documented her world with honesty, uncertainty and excitement, and she did it all on her own terms. It shouldn't feel rare to see a perspective actually coming from the person living it. But in Japan, for a long time it was. That's the world that HIROMIX pushed back against. She didn't fix the problem entirely, but she carved out room for others to follow, and that's what really mattered. So thank you, HIROMIX, for making our world a slightly better place. Thank you so much for watching. If you want to subscribe and leave something nice in the comments, that'd be really cool. Give it a like maybe. Also, my Instagram and my Patreon are going to be down below, so go give them a follow if you can. Yeah, Happy New Year, guys. I will see you in the next one.